announcing the arrival of the Director General. While standing, shall we please take the petition agency and distinguished members of the media who are here with us. A very good afternoon. Many of you had come from far places. You have had the whole of yesterday undergoing some capacity building with the National Electricity Regulatory Commission and the most of today. I have found it very necessary that I engage with you, even if informally. Many of you, like has already been said, are meeting with me for the first time, even though some of you have been in contact with me online and on our various social media platforms. I would want to welcome you most warmly to the headquarters of the National Orientation Agency and to say that this engagement has become quite imperative because of the nature of the times that we as a people and as a country are passing through, and of course the very high level of expectation from Nigerians and from government from across the globe that is being put on the neck of the National Orientation Agency as the #1 citizens engagement agency of the country. I intended actually not to read a prepared text, but because the media is here, I find it imperative to read a prepared text, which, if they so wish, they will carry along with them. The National Orientation Agency is the statutory body that is established by law to synthesize, orientate, and publicize government policies, programs, and activities, has continued to explore outside-the-box strategies to live up to its varied, very expansive, and overreaching mandates in the face of very serious challenges. In the face of very serious challenges, two of which fundamentally are the challenge of personnel, especially in our local government offices, where most of the work of the agency is supposed to be taking place. And secondly, very huge funding challenge. I want to start this address by expressing appreciation to our foot soldiers in the 36 states and the federal capital, including you, state directors, and our 774 community mobilization officers that are spread across the local governments in Nigeria. I know the difficult circumstances under which you operate. I also know the sacrifices that you make so as to ensure that government policies, programs, and activities are explained to the public so as to secure their support and the buy-in. Your patriotism and the spirit of sacrifice for the nation, I very seriously acknowledge. Upon the heels of the announcement of the removal of subsidy on petrol, we immediately activated our state structures to carry advocacy to religious leaders, to traditional rulers, to women and the youth groups, to markets, to motor parks, to media houses, and opinion holders in various communities across the country. This is in addition to what we have done on our respective social media handles. The jingles that were produced for sensitization and the public enlightenment purposes being played on our respective social media handles, especially on Twitter and the Instagram pages, in Twitter handles and on the Instagram page and on Facebook. We also have, through collaborative partnership with the Nigerian Television Authority and the Federal Radio Corporation of Nigeria, played these jingles at prime time of their broadcasts moments. But beyond that, we also have found it worthy of translating some of these jingles into local languages for purposes of community sensitization and the public enlightenment. This sensitization and advocacy activities were carried out over a period of 3 weeks, even against the backdrop of non-release of the 2023 budget for programs as the nation is going through a period of transition. You will also recall that the National Orientation Agency had carried out robust sensitization across the country on the Petroleum Industry Act in an effort to prepare the minds of members of the public on what to expect in the unfolding petroleum industry ecosystem. We did the sensitization on the Petroleum Industry Act in anticipation of the shock that might ensue when the full-blown deregulation of the sector sets in, as we are presently experiencing. Based on the report that I am receiving from the state directors, it will appear that the sensitization processes need to be sustained so as to forestall backlash from the public owing to lack of awareness. I will engage the relevant authorities to ensure that they recognize our need for content and the funding to be able to effectively meet our mandate of public orientation and the sensitization and the awareness creation on the new petroleum ecosystem of subsidy removal and its possible impact on public confidence in government. Gentlemen of the press, we are not unaware of the various commentaries of your media and the television platforms, radio and the television platforms, which misrepresent the work that the National Orientation Agency does, and of course the circumstances under which we work. Some of these commentaries are insensitive, to say the least, to the sacrifice that our staff across Nigeria are making to meet up with public expectations under very highly challenging funding circumstances. But in spite of that, the agency has thought out of the box, gone out to seek for partnership and collaborations with different government institutions, civil society organizations, and other similar stakeholders. And of course, had upped its game and those operations on the most cost-effective way to sensitize and educate Nigerians by deploying many of its messages on its social media platforms. For instance, it is not a secret that 2023 budget releases are yet to commence. The National Orientation Agency is being hamstrung by the envelope system of budget. But it is one agency that must have to come up at any point for purposes of intervention. so many critical government policies and programs that need proper public understanding and buy-in have come up since the beginning of the year. It is the Naira redesign, it is the petroleum subsidy removal, it is the unification of the exchange rate, it is sensitization on diphtheria, it is sensitization on the just reported anthrax disease, and so many, and so on and so forth. Or is it even on as simple as respect for our national values and our national symbols? These are things that the NOA must have to be seen to be doing now and always, not only in Abuja, not only in state capitals, but in all local governments and the communities. The role of the agency is, by every stretch of the imagination, very, very highly capital intensive. We are not a revenue generating agency, and so budget releases is central to the work that we do. In spite of the huge funding challenge, the agency has not been caught napping at every stage of its operations and at every stage at which its intervention is required. Even in the face of all this, we have continued to interface with various stakeholders to enlighten them on the subsidy removal. The least we expect from the media is to grant us the right of reply, which is fundamental to journalism ethics. This is very important. You gain nothing from denigrating government institutions. And of course, the nation gains nothing by citizens denigrating the institutions of government. We are aware that many media platforms expect patronage from the National Orientation Agency. This is quite natural and is expected. But this expectation is not out of place. I note that this expectation is definitely not out of place, because we are partners in the information ecosystem. However, I urge you to recognize the fact that the agency is grossly underfunded, and that as much as we would love to, under the present funding structure, we can hardly afford your commercial rates. Those of you who are here do understand that we can hardly, in fact, we cannot afford your commercial rates, whether at prime time or at off-peak time. What we require is partnership, and we expect that some of the issues we expect you to broadcast, you will do under corporate social responsibility, which unfortunately no media house is willing to grant, except perhaps public-owned media houses. The media owes a sacred duty to contribute its quota to national stability and national growth. And so we expect you to do your part in the collective responsibility of national growth and development. I congratulate you, the media, for the much that you are doing, but please recognize that much more is still expected of you and of all of us. Directors of the National Orientation Agency, while I appreciate you, I want to call upon you to redouble your efforts on sensitization on the subsidy removal and indeed on all other subsequent critical policies of government and its programs. We need to sustain the sensitization on subsidy removal as well as the advocacy to get public buy-in. The recent price hike in the price per liter of petrol is being seen by the public as another increase in the price of petrol by the government. This is a wrong impression, and the public needs to be educated on this. What is actually happening is the new reality in the petroleum industry ecosystem under the regulation. Prices will go up and down depending on market forces. This is the reality under the regulation, and the people need to be aware. You are, as stake directors, needed to actively seek opportunities to explain this on radio and the television, and of course, engage with community stakeholders. I urge the media to support NOA by providing such speaking opportunities as a public service in the interest of our country. This engagement with directors of the National Orientation Agency is aimed at enabling feedback on the sensitization and advocacy carried out so far by the NOA across the country on the issue of subsidy removal, so as to enable us to reevaluate our strategies and reposition ourselves for the great task ahead, as there will be no doubt the hardship, and the people need to be made aware of why things are happening the way they are happening now. At the end of this engagement, we will develop a special report reflecting the situation across the country in the aftermath of the fuel subsidy removal for the benefit of decision makers at the highest levels of government. Finally, I call on various stakeholders across the value chain to actively support the NOA as we continue with great determination to work towards meeting public and the government expectation on our mandate of sensitization, reorientation, and securing public buy-in on government policies, programs, and activities. Let me end this address by again reiterating my appreciation to the media, to the directors of the National Orientation Agency from across the 36 states of the Federation and the FCT, the corporate headquarters, and our community orientation and mobilization officers across the 774 local governments in the country. I wish to call upon my fellow countrymen and women out there to please support our government as we collectively work towards building the nation of our dreams for the benefit of generations yet unborn. Today's sacrifice will pay off tomorrow. Thank you for listening. God bless the Federal Republic of Nigeria.
Thank you very much, DJ Sir.
Thanks for checking out SYMFONI on YouTube. Please be sure to subscribe and like our videos for updates.